Let's start with Bucs Texans and the QBs. You know, the one thing that stood out to me was Stroud, and this is why I'm not touching anything passing with Stroud, at least. He finished behind only Jalen Hurts in catchable throw rate in week 1 per fantasy points data and in pressure rate. So that's not great. That's a bad combo. Michael Penix posted 24 fantasy points, by the way, against Houston, or in this matchup against the Texans. But no, I'm not going there. I'm not feeling it. Baker Mayfield at 232.5. It's a tough matchup. Without Tristan Wirfs, we'll get into the receiver stuff here, but I don't know. It's a good enough number at 232.5, but I'm worried. Now, Baker's been balling. I was worried about him in their last game in week 1, and he didn't have a great day, but he did throw 3 tutties. Receiver props. Boy, how about Nico Collins last week? It's like, wow. How counterintuitive is the NFL? Because for my money, Nico Collins and Brian Thomas look like tremendous picks, you know, in terms of being major alphas for their teams, you know, decent enough quarterback play, young guys, you know, line them up all over the place. Well, that's not going well. Well, we'll see about Nico tonight, but it doesn't bode well that Drake London only got 8 grabs for 55 on 15 targets last week in this matchup. That is not good. Tough matchup here. Jamal Dean is not that great, so I'm not that worried about him. Emeka Egbuka is looking like a critical player here because, again, we'll get into Mike Evans. He's going to be on Derek Stingley, Mike Evans, quite a bit. Nakua went off in this matchup last week. Texans allowed 9 grabs for 129 to Rams slot receivers. Hello. So I think Egbuka, who played 46% of the routes inside last week, has to step up given the tougher matchup there for Mike Evans. Now, to be clear, Sterling Shepard is their primary slot receiver. Also a viable long shot here, at least at 25.5. That's not bad. I've always been a Sterling Shepard apologist, and he did play with Baker Mayfield in college there. So do love Sterling Shepard. It's hard to believe he's still in the NFL, but they're perilously thin at receiver. Speaking of Big Mike, again, he's going to see the most of Derek Stingley, who I think is awesome. I think he'll do something similar to what Devontae did last week in the same matchup, and it's not great. 4 for 51 on 8 targets. Let's move on to running back data of note. Bucky Irving, how about this? He averaged just 0.5 yards before contact last week without Tristan Wirfs, who's out again. That's not great. This matchup, no walk in the park. Houston allowed the 8th fewest yards per game rushing and the 8th fewest receiving yards per game to running backs. However, I do think it's going to be close. I do think that the Texans are going to struggle. So I do think he's going to get the ball because Bucky owned that backfield with a 77% snap share last week, 61% carry share, and a 57% route share as my guy Rachaad White was rendered pretty much irrelevant. For Nicholas Chubb, 50% of the snaps last week. That's usually where he's at. But how about the Bucs gave up the 4th fewest rushing yards per game to running backs last year, and they shut down Bijan Robinson. By the way, it's Bijan, not Bijan. He flip-flopped on it, but that's fine. 2.0 yards per carry for Bijan, and Algiers was at 2.4. Does not bode well for Nicholas Chubb. Chargers, Raiders data points. Don't see a ton going on here with the passing attacks. Raiders allowed a league low 6.2 YPA to Drake May last week. Of course, Justin Herbert, he did go off, and they did remain pass heavy with a 13.5% pass rate over expectation. I should have probably taken that Justin Herbert rushing prop, but I'm not going to do it. I want to get too weird because I do have some weird ones here. Raiders are ranked 4th in pass rate over expectation in the season opener. So Geno Smith will likely throw it plenty. I do think they're going to try and run, though the Chargers hold Mahomes to just a 6.6 YPA last week. When I looked at all the receivers, there's two who have good schematics and for the Chargers and one who has a bad one. It's Keenan Allen. He's not great against cover 3 and cover 2, which the Raiders used 68% of the time last week. It's a pretty poor 1.53 yards per route run. Now, against those same coverages, Ladd McConkey at 2.61 yards per route run. So he's looking good. He had 5 catches in both games. And then Quentin Johnston also does well against the cover 2 and the cover 3 shell, 2.55 yards per route run. So those guys, I'm leaning to them a little bit more than a Keenan Allen. Jacoby Myers did really well last week, and if Brock Bowers is out, he'll probably get a lot of targets. Nothing particularly scary about the matchup for the corners, and he'll be inside a little bit, and the Chiefs got 11 catches for 136 and a tutty out of the slot where Jacoby Myers is lining up half the time. And then we have the Brock Bowers situation. You know, it's not the greatest tight end matchup. He didn't go off in either game. 6 for 58. 4 for 50 with a touch. So let's lower the expectations there for one Brock Bowers. And then finally, the running game props here. Chargers limited KC running backs to just 3.3 yards per carry and 3 grabs for 18. But they don't have Denzel Perryman. I think that's a little bit of a boost for Aston Genty. He did dominate the backfield touches, 86% snap share, 79% carry share. Omarion Hampton, we'll see if Najee Harris plays a little bit more. He only had 2 touches on an 18% target share. Raiders allowed just 2.3 adjusted yards before contact last week, and he got 1.3. Yards before contact. So may not be a warm and fuzzy, wonderful spot there for Omarion Hampton. I do have 2 Monday night specials, but I will start with the propage. Last one here is a little weird, but I'm going to go first with CJ Stroud over 8.5 rushing yards. Now, this is over at FanDuel. The odds are bad, but I very rarely go with bad odds plays, by the way. I could, I guess, help my record out, but I don't do that. But I do when it's a lock. And CJ Stroud over 8.5 rushing yards, I believe, is a lock. Here's his last 3 games as CJ Stroud has dealt with this bad O-line and lack of running attack. Last week, 5 carries for 32. Week before that, in the playoffs, 6 carries for 42. The week before that, in the playoffs, 6 carries for 42. So my man is averaging like 40 yards rushing a game in his last 3. I know it's only 3, but we're going to get to 9 yards. Pretty much. That's it. That's all we got to say. Sterling Shepard. I can't believe we're going here, but we are 21.5. That is doable. And he is their primary slot receiver. Jalen Petrie is the slot corner. He'll see a little bit of Petrie. Who dishes out production. Get it? But 0.31 fantasy points per route run given up it's pretty good. It's below average. I know Ibuka is there and running 46% of his routes from the slot, but Shepard played with Baker in college. He's good. And he beat his catch and yardage numbers last week. So part of this, too, of course, is Big Mike. I think Big Mike could be neutralized this week. I'm a big Derek Stingley guy. I love Derek Stingley. What can I say? He's awesome. I remember his grandfather. I always bring this up, I know, but I remember I was somewhat traumatized by his grandfather getting paralyzed when I was a young boy. So I never forgot that. And I'm just glad that his grandson, Derek, is balling in the NFL. And I do worry about him slowing down Mr. Mike Evans. I think that's a real tough spot for Mike Evans. So in addition to Sterling Shepard, over 21.5, I am very in on Ibuka. And I'm actually surprised these odds aren't that bad at all. So I'm worried about that, but I would be absolutely floored if Ibuka didn't catch 5 balls, quite frankly. I mean, he's popped right in there he's like a 3-year veteran out there. Puka went off last week in this matchup. The Texans allowed 9 catches for 129 to Ram slot receivers, mostly Puka. So Ibuka, 46% of the routes will be needed to step up. He had a very solid 20% first read target share last week behind only Mike Evans at 30%. And this week he might even clear 30% with Mike Evans dealing with Derek Stingley. Next up, if we do get a loss, it'll probably be this one or the next one, quite frankly. 3-2 minimum here. Hopefully 4-1. Last Thursday, I thought it was 4-1. I was feeling that. We just missed it, but 3-2 is not too shabby. Bucky Irving over 65.5. I know he averaged just 0.5 yards before contact, and they won't have Tristan Wirfs again. But I am expecting volume because I don't think Stroud and the Texans are very equipped to light up the scoreboard. And Bucky just completely owned the backfield last week, a 77% snap share, 61% carry share. Rachaad White, I thought he'd be a little bit more involved, only one game, but my man got only 3 touches in the game for 16 yards. And stop talking Sean Tucker. He's not that good. He's a third. That's it. I mean, he could run like the wind in a straight line. That's about it. And he is big, but it's the Bucky Irving show. So we'll go over 65.5. We are expecting a lot of volume. No question about that. 20 carries. I think he gets 20 carries, and he'll rip off a longer run, at least 1 or 2, and get to this number. Basically, that is my thought process. And then finally, this is a little weird. Jalen Noel over 6.5 receiving yards. This honestly is, I don't know. It's a karma one. Good karma with Jalen Noel. Christian Kirk is out. I understand he doesn't play a ton. I'm looking here. I didn't log the snappage and all that. Now, he only had 2 targets last week, 1 grab for 7. I know this is weird, but can we replicate that? I think we can. And I'm not worried about any of the corners for Tampa. So we are going to try him out. It's a weird one, Jalen Noel, over 6.5. I did have a brief interaction with him. We were interviewing him as a company, actually, on the field at the Senior Bowl. And someone had noted, I think Brett Whitefield had compared him to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So me being the wise ass, I got in Jalen Noel's face. I'm like, well, can you hang with Amon-Ra in the weight room? And he laughed. He took it really well. And he was like, oh, yeah, great guy. And a very good player. I know he's still learning on the job, but we can get 7 yards. So there are my props. 2 Monday night specials. What is the Monday night special? It started out, it's a low-end guy who's going to move the needle and surprise, or it's a high-risk prop with like a high reward. It's kind of a sleeper prop or play or whatever. So Monday night special numero uno. I did have at one point a major man crush on Sterling Shepard. Perhaps that ended when he was on the Giants boat incident with his shirt off, but that's neither here nor there. It didn't go well for Odell either on that photo, but I'm going to go with 40 or more yards at plus 265, thinking that Mike Evans is going to see a lot of Stingley and he'll be fed the ball. Baker will be feeding the ball in the slot to Shepard and Ibuka. And then Monday night special number 2. This isn't real fancy. It's a little boring, but winning is not boring. Plus 160, Ladd McConkey to have the most receiving yards in the game between the Chargers and the Raiders. That's not bad considering Brock Bowers is banged up and Keenan Allen doesn't have a very good schematic matchup. Feel pretty darn good about that one. In lieu of taking the Ladd McConkey over the prop, we'll go with Ladd, leading receiver for the game. You are welcome.
Thanks for watching, but don't let the betting insights end here. If you want an extra edge this football season, you can get a month of VSiN Pro right now absolutely free. That means access to our betting insights, analysis, and tools like our betting splits at 0 cost to you. Click the link in the description to sign up.